Exploring the bizarre. Your e-ticket ride into the world of the paranormal. Strap yourself in as we traverse the universe exploring the unexplained. UFOs, ghosts, lost worlds, cryptozoology, as well as other dimensions. It's time to take back the night. Now, your electrifying hosts of Exploring the Bizarre, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
Wow, Tim, you know, I feel I'm looking all around me here, and I feel like I'm inside an episode of Wild Kingdom. Look at all these beautiful wild animals. We got a bear, a lion, an elephant. Geez, I haven't seen an elephant up close like this since I was a child. And there's a beautiful wolf over there. My goodness, and buffaloes. And I thought that they were only out on the prairie, but they're right here in our KCOR radio studio tonight. So, Tim, how are you doing out there in Jasper, Indiana?
Well, I'm doing all right, but right now I'm a little worried about our producer Tina if there's buffalo in the studio.
Well, I'm sure that they're all very friendly buffalo. You know, actually, though, I was thinking when I was up in Canada, like around Vancouver Island, there are all these native totems. And they each depict different types of animals, you know, right. Like wild animals. They're carved by the local Native American tribes, or North American tribes, I guess. I was up in Vancouver Island, right? But I'm wondering if there's a connection between the totems and what our guest has written about. And so why don't you tell us who we're going to be speaking with for the first hour here tonight?
Oh, it'll be my pleasure, Tim. Well, tonight, we're really happy to have Zahara Hieronymus with us. Now, Zahara is an award-winning radio broadcaster, social justice and environmental activist, and professional artist. Now, she has hosted the national radio program Future Talk until 2008 and co-hosts 21st Century Radio with her husband, Robert Hieronymus, which I'm happy to say that I was a guest on their show at one time. Now, Zahara is the author of several books. Her latest is White Spirit Animals, Prophets of Change. Now, this book looks at the special role played by white spirit animals in spiritual traditions and prophecy around the globe, where they are seen as guardians of animal wisdom, each with a special purpose and gift. Zahara reveals how they have collaborated with humanity since the last ice age, inspiring spiritual practices and conferring shamanistic powers, and are considered the stewards of the great spiritual transformation that occurs during transitional times. So, Zahara, thank you very much for being with us tonight on Exploring
Pleasure.
the Bizarre.
Yeah, thank you for bringing me to your audience with you. Thank you.
Well, you know what I did want.
Before we go on too far, I'm almost incoherent at this time of night, so I need to say that before I actually make an effort to talk to anybody.
Oh, don't worry. According to our audience, we're incoherent most of the time, so you're in good company. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Well, I did want to bring it the conversation back to the totems, the Native American totems that I saw up there in Canada. Is there a connection between that and what you're involved in?
Most definitely. You know, all the indigenous cultures, it doesn't matter what part of the planet you turn to or what millennium you look at, have always appreciated that we and the natural world are collaborators in life. You know, it's not a hierarchy of humans being at the top and we have the right to do and choose whatever we want, but that we're all here each with our own purpose. So when Native traditions make totems, it's their way of honoring the animal kingdom that is part of their existence, not just because if it's a tribe that, for instance, in the past may have hunted whale to eat or shot bear because that's how they survived through the winter, or killed buffalo because they used the skins for the teepees, etc. any totem, whether it's a person wearing an animal they feel close to as a symbol on a chain around their neck, or somebody else who actually buys a sculpture of an animal they feel attracted to, or a native community crafting these totems, which the whole community uses as gathering points, most often for ceremony, for prayer and meditation. It's a form of magic, low magic. Any symbol of anything we want to make contact with, whether it's human, animal, elemental, off-planet beings, all of these symbols enable our consciousness to connect with that which we want to communicate. If everything is related through the law of similars, which I'm sure you've talked about, which is through octaves, like octaves on a piano, where a low C and a high C are a similar note vibrating at different frequencies, and you hit the low one and the high one is automatically responding, even if you don't hear it in harmonics. The same thing with totems or sculptures or things we bring around ourselves as symbols of anything we're attracted to, because the law of similar says that all things are related in octaves. And that's the purpose of totems and symbols and magic. That's how magic works.
Now, are all of these animals created equally, or is the lion more important than the bear or the elephant or the wolf, or does it depend upon your location?
Well, it's a great question, but I think from the animal's perspective and the insect's perspective and the amphibian's perspective is that none is greater than the other. They have different purposes. From a cosmological perspective, however, the 5 animals I wrote about, which resulted from a waking vision I had in 2013, where all of a sudden I was surrounded by all these white spirit animals, a white whale, a white shark, a white buffalo, many, many animals other than just the ones I wrote about. The 5 that I ended up writing about at their request are all mammals: the bear, the lion, the elephant, the wolf, and the buffalo. And the thing that they hold in common, besides off-planet elders and things that the societies that revere them speak to, is the fact that they all are guardians of enormous ecosystems, and they're the apex guardians. So unfortunately, these are the very same mammals, the bear, the lion, the elephant, the wolf, and the buffalo, that men in particular like to kill, like to murder. And I can't call it anything but murder. I don't believe there's any such thing as sport hunting. Sport is between 2 teams, has the same rules, and you're playing a game. There's no such thing as sport hunting. It's murder. So the bear, the lion, the elephant, the wolf, and the buffalo, the ecosystems they preside over, being the apex guardian, what they said to me is, when I said, how can we save more life on Earth, given that we're in the 6th extinction, we're losing 27,000 species a year now, something that's rarely talked about in the public forums. And they said, save as many of us as you can. And at first I wondered, well, what does that mean? Are they more special? The exact question you asked me, Tim. And what they said was, no, it's just that we need to create resiliency on the earth. And the way to create resiliency in the ecosystem is to be sure we do our best to support the ecosystem in which these apex guardians thrive. Of course, human encroachment due to our own habitation, and then hunting, and then other kind of perverse tortures that we do to animals, whether it's, so to speak, entertainment or harvesting their organs like we do with bears. They have a whole bile industry where they put these bears in cages for the 5 years they live, when they'd normally live a lifespan of 30-some years, and they put catheters in them in order to take the bile that comes out of the liver and is stored in the kidney. They also sometimes amputate the hands of these bears and sell them. I mean, when you actually... Oh, my God. Oh, it's horrible. I mean, the truth is... It's horrible. I suffered a great deal in writing this book because I'm an empath and also a telepath and a psychic, and I'm very sensitive. And so all the pain and suffering that these animals have gone through are like when humans break elephants in order to use them for entertainment or labor. It's horrendous what we do. Or the wolf. Now,
when you say use animals for entertainment, now, are you totally opposed to zoos?
Yes, I am. At this point in time, I am. I call them, like others who are really opposed to them. I'm not a big activist in this way. I'm more of, I guess I'm on the inner kingdom work in general, but they call them multi-species prisons. And when you think about it, as Wolf said,
Yeah,
Go ahead.
don't you think, on the other hand, though, too, that let's say children growing up, if it were not for a visit to the Bronx Zoo or the Philadelphia Zoo, that they might not even know that some of these animals exist.
That's like saying, let's take the children to the prison and visit the men. And we might not even know that men like this exist. I mean, the truth is that none of these animals are in environments that are even remotely near their natural habitats. So the way they function in captivity has little to do with their natural functioning in the wild. It doesn't happen. Like some people be told when you see the elephants swinging their heads back and forth and doing repetitive behavior, or chimpanzee running up against a glass window over and over and throwing their body against it, and people go, oh, they're playing. Well, they're not. These are neurotic psychological illnesses that are being presented to the human as entertainment and healthy. It's not healthy. These are animals who have had great deal of psychological suffering, sometimes physical suffering, and certainly they have been deprived of their natural autonomy in choosing mates, in being part of family structures, in being part of herd mentality and history. You know, I think humans in general, the general Western culture I'm speaking of, I'm not talking about indigenous peoples anywhere in the world, because they all understand these are sentient beings. And they have joy, and they have family, and they have food preferences, and they have play preferences. They have memory, they have history records, they have group memory, they have individual memory. How does that differ from us? So it's really different.
Yeah, I mean, one could say, well, on the intelligence scale, we are probably a great deal superior to most of the members of the wild kingdom, but it certainly has gotten them by for thousands of years, and there's no doubt that we have encroached upon their social structures. Now, Tim, what would you say about this? I mean, do you have a gut reaction to the idea of animals in captivity?
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty much against it myself. I mean, like Zohara pointed out, a lot of these actions that we see these animals doing that the people find funny. She's right. I mean, it's because it's because they're in captivity, and I just always like to think, how would the majority of us react if we were in similar situations? People would end up doing the very same thing.
As perhaps some of the people that have been abducted by UFOs.
Well, exactly. The people who come back and report those situations, I mean, it's always a traumatic experience, and I can imagine it's the same kind of experience for the animals. But I did want to ask Zora, what was going on in your life in 2013 that may have led up to this first experience? I mean, was there? Do you think that there was a catalyst that started this communication for you?
That's a nice question. I have always been sensitive to the animal kingdom, and as a child, at the age of 6, I literally remember praying for the ability to talk to the animals. And I, like many people, Pippi Longstocking and Dr. Dolittle, I was born in the mid-50s, were kind of my role models. And I thought I'd learn how to interpret an animal's language, like interpret a bird call or interpret a dog bark. And what I discovered, of course, is that there's this other form of communication between all sentient and between all life form. It doesn't matter what, even inanimate and animate. And that's that all things can communicate with each other. And every 10 years, I have pretty much changed my professional focus. And I spent 10 years in the performing arts, 10 years in the communication arts, 10 years in the holistic healing arts. And I'm in my 10 years now of the esoteric arts applied. I've always been a student of esoterica since a very young age. And so I think I was already into wanting to do more with animals and animal communication. And so I've always done readings on lost dogs and cats, and started doing a little bit with wild animals. And then I had an experience with a bonobo named Matata. I had interviewed Sue Rumbaugh, who is a world-famous primatologist, who, through her many years of work with these bonobos in captivity in a lab in Iowa at one point, they started being able to do what she taught them, which was communicate by using computers. Matata was the matriarch of this family, and she, of course, did not approve of this. She didn't use it herself, but her son Kanzi and her daughter Pambanisha both did. And after I interviewed Sue, 2 weeks later, like at around 11 o'clock at night, I'm writing away at my book, and standing in front of me is a naked bonobo. Well, how can a bonobo be naked? But that's the way it felt to me. And all of a sudden, I see her. My white shepherd Bella sees her. She's visibly frightened by this astral entity. And Matata basically wanted to have some conversation. As she put it, I want to have some talk. And it was the beginning of my work with the wild animal kingdom. I had thought I would do a book going to the zoo and talking to the animals in captivity. And I decided it would be so depressing that I wasn't going to be able to handle that very well, nor maybe do them a great service. But Matata started telling me stories about the last ice age. She started telling me about when humans and bonobos lived together and how bonobos would take the discarded humans from the ice age. And it was really interesting because she really showed me, and she would come to me at all times of day. As I used to joke, she called me up on the telepathic line, and sometimes I could take her call, and sometimes I'd tell her, call me later. But I decided, after calling my mentor and friend, Dr. Stanley Krippner, who just knows so much about all this work, what did he think about this? Should I follow up on this? And he said, my gosh, it's a wonderful project. Just take good notes. So for a year, I had conversations with Matata at a distance that I recorded. And then after she and I begun doing that, I had this experience of a waking vision where all these white spirit animals came to me. And prior to that vision, I had had an experience with 6 white spirit buffalo coming and telling me that they were my guardians and that they were really anxious to help. And that was sort of the beginning before the book. But it took me a year, almost a year and a half, after they requested that I tell their story. I mean, I really felt like I was before revered elders. And I said, why have you come to me and what can I do for you? And they said, we'd like you to tell our story. And they didn't mean tell it in one book at a time, like one for the whale and one for the buffalo, but all of them together, because they said, if you do that, you and the reader or the others, the audience, will have a better understanding of our purpose and what's happening now. And that was the beginning. And really, they do share very many commonalities. They all are related to stories, mythologies in the cosmos. All of the cultures that revere them point to off-planet elders. All of them are said to represent a reminder of the Ice Age, and that's why they're white-coated, unlike their species kin, and that they only come and only appear when we are about to go through dramatic earth changes and humans need their help. And that's why they've come. And that's why they're showing up so often now worldwide, and why we're seeing so many white animals in so many species that may not be white spirit animals, meaning having 2 recessive genes, one from each parent. But the fact that they're white and they stand out makes them vulnerable. We pay attention to them. And that's why I call them prophets of the wild, because these white animals of each species really are standouts, and they are here to attract our attention and to understand that through compassionate right action, we can all work together to make the ecosystem more resilient.
All right, this may seem like a silly question, but you've referred a couple of times now to the last ice age. What was so important about the last ice age? And I mean, are there any references to what was going on previous to the last ice age?
There are. And in fact, Matata started talking about that, the war of the gods. And she refers to off-planet beings who came and destroyed the big giants. And in the process, they destroyed some of the human giant interbreeds. I mean, it's fascinating history. And when I first listened to it, I thought, you've got to be kidding. I mean, this is like sitting down and listening to folk tales. But then I went to the history books and started reading so many other sources about things that she told me, even about the giants, of the animal giants. I mean, the scale of things have changed. You know, the woolly mammoth compared to the 30-feet men or the 18-foot people were very much in each other's scale, like we are to today's buffalo. So people always ask me, are we going to go extinct like all these animals? And I said, well, it seems to me that we're coming down in scale, and that some of that might be for our survival off planet, meaning a smaller scale species will do better in space. Maybe smaller scale species will be able to transition more into the spirit body when we no longer need physical vessels to experience consciousness. I don't know. This is all hypothetical. But the last ice age, after that's around 12,500 BCE, is when we had these massive floodings, when comet fragments hit the Earth, and then all of the flooding and all of the trauma on Earth occurred, including freezing. I mean, we had sort of like 8,000 years ago, the weather stabilized, and we are now moving into an unstable weather period. But we have existed as a result of the last ice age in a very calm 10,000 year period. It's changing now. And I think we're headed to a glacial age. Yes, there's warming, but I think like when people get sick, you get a hot temperature and then you freeze to death. You know, you have no blood circulation. I think all that we're seeing, this instability of the climate, part of our doing, part of it's just cyclical rises and falling of civilizations and ice ages. We're in an interglacial period. So we are ripe towards moving towards a new glacial age. It's just a question of what form and how quickly it can happen.
Now, haven't some of the Native American tribes talked about this white buffalo for a long time?
Absolutely. The Lakota revere the white buffalo and the white buffalo calf woman, who came and taught them all of their rituals, their marriage ceremony, their smoke and smudge, their naming ceremonies, their ceremonies at death and birth. And the white buffalo was said to come back and appear when we were in need of their help. Meaning all of these traditions, whether it's the Buddhist, the Zulu, the Cherokee, it doesn't matter. All believe that we are in such calamitous state that we will have earth changes. There's no question about it. We're already beginning to see the devastation of tsunamis and earthquakes and rampant fires and famine, etc. And it's not going to get better right away, but we have an opportunity through divine grace, through prayer, through right action, through technology, through working, with reverence and humility with all of life on Earth, to restore this planet without it having to take a deep nosedive. That doesn't mean that there aren't cycles of civilizations rising and falling, which there are, and there are purposes for it, which is our evolution. So I think all of them feel we're at a critical evolutionary pivot point, and each of us is taking part in it.
All right. Well, we're going to have to interrupt this talk for a few minutes here as we go to our first break of the night. So when we come back, we will continue our conversation about the white spirit animals right here on Exploring the Bizarre.
Now back to Exploring the Bizarre, with two of the most electrifying researchers in the paranormal, your hosts, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
Welcome back to Exploring the Bizarre, and tonight we're talking with Zohara Hieronymus. And Zohara, we have a question. Actually, it's more of a statement from Annie, one of our listeners, or Anne, I think. And she says that I had a profound dream where a white wolf entered my car. I was afraid and closed the door. However, the wolf slipped in and lay in my arms crying. What was the significance of that? It haunts me.
Wow, what a powerful dream.
It is.
The wolf is the guardian of the threshold of life and death. The wolf, as I discovered in my book, and there's a long story about it we won't tell tonight, but, I always thought of Anubis, the guardian of the dead, as being the jackal or the dog. Everybody would talk about that for centuries. And the wolf made clear that I understood, no, Anubis is a wolf. It's not a jackal. It's not a dog. And then, of course, I looked that up. The way I worked was I would do dreaming with the animals. They'd tell me information, and then I'd go do a Google search the following day or 2 days later to see if anything they told me was true. What I discovered is that the wolf is really the one that teaches us the most about the continuity between life and death. We call it life and death, but The wolf teaches us, like indigenous peoples tell you, it's a continuum. It's not a being here and a not being here. It's a question of consciousness. So I think it's a beautiful dream because the white wolf entering her car is saying that wherever she's going, it wants to help guide her. I mean, the wolf is a powerful, powerful guardian because it's of all these mammals, it's the only one where the male and the female stay together their whole lives. Not so much like married partner, but the male and the female animals themselves all work in community with the bear and the buffalo, etc., the elephant and the lion. The male and female don't do as much together. You know, the elephant, it's a matriarchal herd, and the male elephants go off on their own unless they're watering holes and need to protect them. Same thing with the buffalo and the bear. But the wolf, so Anne's dream is beautiful that the wolf wouldn't leave and lay in her arms crying. She may have, and you could ask her, she can answer, has she been dealing with the death of somebody close to her or somebody she loves, or is she afraid of somebody dying who she loves? Because that might be part of why the wolf came to her, was to tell her that she doesn't have to be afraid. The fact that the wolf cries, I think, is because we don't understand enough about how sacred life is. That's the impression I'm getting from this moment. And that whether we look at the devastation we reap upon the animal kingdom, whether it's chickens or cows, or in my case, my book, the larger mammals, it's horrendous. And then we do the same thing to humans, whether it's men, women, or children. I mean, when we think about the life that gets taken on this planet with such disregard, and what Wolf knows, and I think anybody who does any of the work on the other side through the veil will tell you, everybody's still here. As I always joke, it's all of us together, or it's all of us together. And this is a beautiful dream, Anne. You know, the fear of the unknown is often what the wolf represents for people, because they are guardians of the underworld. And then if we look at the three worlds, the world above us, the middle kingdom, which is us living here, and then the underworld, they really help us navigate all of those things. So they're also considered to be the guardians of the Milky Way road. And the elephant is considered to be the one that stirs the Milky Way and brings all life to being. So they're related as well. And again, it's a beautiful dream of regeneration and hope. And she
we used to have a white wolf come to our UFO and New Age conferences. I have a friend of mine, Barbara Kane, whose husband Arthur was the bass player in the New York Dolls, the famous pre-punk band. And she had this white wolf who would come to the conference and sit on the couch next to me. The only thing we ever had a little dispute over was the bowl of potato chips I had in my lap. I reached for the potato chip at the same time. The wolf's tongue came out and swept two of them away. And I had great regard for the wolf and let her take the potato chips.
Well, I think people
beautiful animal. Beautiful
in the West
animal.
In particular, I think more people feel close to wolf than any other being. And when you look at the superstitions we used to ascribe to the wolf, I mean, they've been more tortured, more horrendously shot and killed and maimed and awful things over the centuries. And hopefully that's changing. But, you know, they're being delisted. And without the wolves, our wilderness really does collapse. And the Yellowstone Park was a beautiful demonstration of what happened when they eliminated the wolves and then reintroduced them, how everything gets healthier. You know, these animals, the bear, the lion, elephant, wolf, and buffalo, not so much the buffalo, but the others are often called predators, and even not so much the elephant. But the bear, lion, and wolf are called predators, and that's how humans justify their wanton killing of them, the hunting to kill them. But the truth is, they're no more predatory than an ant. These aren't animals like humans who ever kill for fun. They only kill if they need to eat, and most of the time they prefer to scavenge other animals' kills, what's already left over. So it's not what people think. And I think the beautiful part about the way the elder traditions around the world who honor these animals and understand that they are kin of ours, brothers and sisters working on our evolution and the stabilization of the planet, is that they all share in being shamanic partners in ritual and healing. And The beautiful thing about it is relative to your show is all of them point to off-planet elders from Sirius, the Pleiades, Alcyon, and Lyra as some of the places some of our ancient teachers came from to help us survive past Earth changes.
Now, having a Leo rising in my chart, can you tell us a little about the lion, the golden-hearted alchemist?
Absolutely. The lion is considered to be the guardian of the entire planet, according to the Zulu tradition. And the white lions in Timbavati, South Africa, have a long association, actually, with planetary life elsewhere. I mean, Mutwa Credo, who I talk about in the book, talks about the white lions have appeared for 400 years. And they first came up during the reign of Queen Numbi in the region of Timbavati, when they say a shining star fell to the ground and the queen approached it. She was really elderly and infirm. She was swallowed by it. She was received by strange beings. She came out again and she'd been restored to health. So they associate the white lions with these off-planet beings. But the history, if you look at Babylonian, Mesopotamian, Sumerian, ancient cultures revered the lion as the guardian of royalty, as the guardian of the planet. And they teach us about the alchemy of the heart, profoundly about leadership, about coming together in community, about seeing and sensing the future and preparing for it. But they really teach us about the alchemy of the heart, and that our goal is to become pure, noble-hearted humans who are guardians of the world.
So it really surprises me, I suppose, and maybe not you so much, that the white spirit animals would even want to deal with us at this point anymore. I mean, the way that humanity has acted throughout the millennia. I mean, and I mean, you even have people who say, "Oh, well, animals. I mean, they're just, they don't even have souls. We're beloved by God. We have souls, but they don't." Why would they even want to deal with this anymore? Aren't they, just like, okay, just go away, humanity.
Well, because they live here and this is their planet. I mean, this is where they reside. They're trying to wake us up. They aren't the problem. We are. So it's not like they're going, oh, goody, we get to wake humans up. This is their job. Just like it's our job to help each other. When you see a baby, you're not going to hurt the baby. So when when they look at us and we're babies, they don't want to hurt us. Like Wolf said, we'd never imprison anybody. It's just not something we would do. And, so I think that, or Wolf, as an example, said, your task is simple. It's CPR, conservation, preservation, restoration. They want to save the earth. That's their job, is to keep it in balance. Our job is to come into reverence and recognition that these are sentient, conscious beings that are trying to work with us to preserve this planet.
And we're a part of the planet as well.
Of course. We are Earth. People always think about us living on the Earth. I'm always blown away by the fact that we're spinning around 1,000 miles an hour and I'm not falling off into space. It's just extraordinary reality, the gift of creation. And that's what we're meant to be as co-creators. So we have all these God powers we don't use. We deny our own divinity. We deny the divinity around us. And that's really what animals live so nobly. They are so forgiving. When you think of the abuse we have heaped upon these animals, whether it's the elephants in the zoo or the bears in the wild or wherever it is, and that they do so little harm to humans, and the one or few times that they might, it's either because we're too close to their young, we've interfered with their hunting ground, or we're too close to their home. But they don't deliberately, like the black bear. I mean, they are so kind and so civil and get along with humans and other animals. And until very recent decades, you would see people picking berries by sunning bears in the southern states. So it's really a question of education and cultural transformation. The unfortunate mythologies that have been promoted that are so destructive from the Roman culture, like Zeus, who would turn himself into a white animal in order to rape an innocent woman and then to take her captive. This is pretty much what patriarchy has done. It's taken on the role of masquerading as father, but in fact is destroyer. And that's the unfortunate side of the Roman mythology that the West has adopted. Whereas the ancient mythologies within these indigenous cultures treat Bear as first person, the co-creator of the planet. Bear is the healer, as an example. Bear is the one who taught the natives about smudge medicine, about sweetgrass, about which herbs to heal with. They know from elephant where to find water, how to take care of the young, how to preserve, matriarchal lineages. These animals taught humans how to be. Natives learned how to hunt from wolf. They also learned how to play the game of lacrosse from wolf. There's so many things that we've learned from animal. I mean, like elephant to me is the most compassionate being on earth. And the Buddhists and the Hindus who revere them understand, and Buddha was thought to have been an elephant in his last life before being a human. And that's why often the great and noble monks are compared to elephants who have discharged their duty and gained total, settlement in mind. But all of these animals, and it doesn't matter whether it's the ant in your backyard or the cardinal that lands on your bird feeder or the dog that sleeps on your bed, they all have awareness. They all have memory. They all have feelings. They all have needs. They all have joys and preferences. And our job is to come into rapport with that. And all you have to do, no matter what animal it is you feel close to, whether it's an animal that's in the wild you don't see, or your own domestic animal or somebody else's, is to call them by name or by image into your heart 3 times and feel what it feels like when they enter your heart being a place of love. And once you've done that with any entity, you are then prepared in a way to have communion with them and to communicate and listen to them. The thing I'd like to encourage people to do is when you start doing this and you say, oh, well, that cardinal said I need more food and I need a water bath to be put outside here, is when they ask you to do something and you hear it and you make a commitment to do it. These are serious relationships. When spirit animals come to a human, like Anne who had that beautiful dream, they're coming because they know you can hear them and that you are open to them. But when we make a commitment, these are serious commitments. So it's the same thing when you call a deceased beloved one or you call somebody from off planet. All consciousness is connected. We need to take more seriously our spoken word and our intentional will. So just remember, if you make a commitment to do anything to anybody and for anything, to do it, even if it's modest, but follow through with it. And if you feel, I can't feed the birds, I can't save the whales, I can't help the bears, you can. Say a prayer for them. Prayer is our most powerful tool that we don't really understand yet how to use as a humanity. But when we awaken to it, I feel certain we can change weather patterns to save life, and we can improve the world around us, each of us individually and together.
Now I see here in your book, White Spirit Animals, that you have a chapter called The Signs, which includes information on giants and dragons. How does that tie in?
Well, again, it goes back to Matata, who started me on this whole journey of understanding as a telepath I could communicate with any animal, anywhere, and any when, as we all can if we practice with each other and others. They started showing me these giants that used to live on our land. And so, of course, I went and looked up Dewhurst's work on the giants, and you do discover, of course, yes, up and through the 1800s, it was very common knowledge that we had enormous royalty giants. That's what they're thought to have been, perhaps from the Toltec civilization, on this continent. Some were as big as a 6-story building. They were 30 feet tall, and we have proof of this in the bones and then, what has been captured archaeologically. But at the turn of the century, the Smithsonian, the church, everybody decided we're not talking about this stuff anymore. It doesn't fit into our little, psychedelic pattern of we're on top and nothing else ever happened but us. And the other thing was showing us the earth changes and what we can do to change them, as well as to encourage our children to dream and to use their imaginations and to have more faith in what our children tell us. That's part of the signs. In Kabbalistic prophecy, which I'm a student of and have been most of my life and wrote 2 books on Kabbalah, this is an age of prophecy that will come primarily through women and children. So children who are coming in now are very old souls. They're very strong. They're very aware of what challenges they'll face after we all move into our spirit bodies. And so they are pretty evolved beings that have their ties in other kingdoms pretty well awake. So the signs of earth changes, the signs of giants being found, the signs of children discovering incredible things at very young ages, 8, 12, making technological developments that adults can't. They're here to help humanity. And I think that was the purpose of White Spirit Animals, Prophets of Change, is just to remind all of us that what we are facing is not insurmountable. We need to, as the lion said, close the ozone hole. That was their preference for one earth change that we should undertake. And the other, they said, was to close the hole in our hearts. Because once we do that and we stop leaking, we can really understand that everything is connected through love. And that's a sign. The Mayas, of course, say we've moved into a new epoch, which vibrationally is much faster cycling than before. What might have taken 1,000,000 years before now takes 30 days. So that every 30 days we have these highs and lows of evolutionary impulse. And we're all being stirred, basically vibrationally, to come into our own higher self. And that's what the White Spirit Animals say are the signs, is this impulse of so many humans earthwide recognizing we had better get it together or the whole ship's going to go down and there's going to be a great deal more suffering than is necessary. You know, we can change through joy. Most of us wait till suffering pushes us from behind, but we have the choice of doing this in a loving way. And that's what the White Spirit Animals, as prophets of change, are here to share with us, is that become resilient, which means to become flexible in the way you see things and think about things. You know, in ancient Kabbalah, it used to be that you had to come up with 72 different ways to solve a problem of anything. I mean, most of us can come up with fewer than 3. So it's really about what they're telling us is to improve the life around us wherever we each live. Go local. I really believe that. Focus on your local communities, whatever it is you choose to do. It doesn't matter what you do. It matters how you do it. To do it with beautiful intention, and then pay attention to what comes into your life cycle, because that's how we can follow the stones that kind of like dropping from the heavens on our trail.
So now, what's been the reaction so far with your book? I mean, I've read it, and I tell you, I've really been moved by it. So, but what comments have you gotten?
Well, that's pretty much what everybody has said. Even some of the wonderful caretakers of these various animal species, like Cynthia Hart Button, who cares for a primarily genetically pure white buffalo herd who has just moved to the Mounds area in Ohio, actually. And she said she uses it as her own Bible and buffalo. Well, this woman knows more about buffalo than probably anybody living. But she said, I seem to have captured the spirit. And what other people have said in general who are already animal lovers is that it deepened their love and appreciation for the sentience of these beings and for their desire to help us restore the earth to balance. And it's not just about restoring the earth, it's about restoring our purpose as co-creators. So there's been nothing negative. I haven't been challenged by anyone to say, oh, this is all nonsense. I really did my best to practice dream telepathy for a year before I even committed to writing the book to see if I could do it, because I'm a waking telepath. And I wanted to see if I could communicate with animals as I do with deceased humans in my dreams. And anybody can do this. And I promise you, if you all do this before you go to sleep at night, whatever you want to communicate with, if it's a deceased dog or a deceased grandparent or somebody who lives 3,000 miles away, picture them, call them into your heart, tell them you love them and that you would love to hear from them. And maybe not that night, but a few nights later, they'll come to you. So my purpose was manyfold in this book. It was to show the extraordinary desire on the part of the animal kingdom to help us preserve this beautiful, extraordinary planet. It was also to show that all sentient life and even inanimate life can be communicated with because it's all vibration. It's all light. We're basically biocapacitors. We're either emanating or receiving, and we do both all the time. We're basically like that lighthouse. And the third part was to show that each of us has this capacity to be much more than constrained by time and space, that our dreams, our imagination, our courage, our humility, our reverence, that these are all qualities we strive to develop as humans, because once we do, we become more able to assist all kingdoms simultaneously in our simple daily lives. You know, I love what the Dalai Lama says is there's no spirituality outside your daily living. And when you're young, you don't believe that. You go to all these workshops, you want all these blissful experiences, you want your highs. But the truth is once you come into refinement and more self-mastery and really work on refining your own response to things, the more likely you'll have these higher experiences in your daily life, like I did in that vision and then in the dream telepathy, and now being able to communicate with just about any animal that somebody asks me, what do they need, or what do you hear, or what do you see?
Well, you know, this would make an absolutely dynamite video presentation, a documentary. I'm hoping that if there's some producer listening to the program or watching this later on the YouTube, that they get in touch with you, because I could just see the beauty of this and the creativity, and your involvement in this and the whole scheme of the white spirit animals. Tim, go ahead. I didn't mean.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I want to share one last thing. You know, at the end of writing my book, my very last experience was with an elder buffalo who represented the 6 million buffalo that once grazed on our continent. We were standing on a mountaintop plateau, quote, overlooking an entire cosmopolitan city where their range used to be. Standing together with such a broad-scale view, he shared that, quote, when any one of us, human, animal, plant, or mineral, fulfills our purpose on earth, we experience the greatest love there is, unquote. Our purpose is to love. Our purpose is to heal. Our purpose is to bring unity. And our purpose is to use our consciousness for the betterment of the world. We're here to serve. And that's the beauty of the white spirit animals as prophets of change. They really want us to work together.
All right.
Now
we've got yes. Oh, I'm sorry, Tim. Go ahead. I was just going to say
go ahead. You were going to say the same thing I was. So go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Zara, why don't you let our audience know where they can get a copy of the book for themselves, and where they can find out more about you?
You can go to whitespiritanimals.com. That's whitespiritanimals.com. The book is published by my beloved publisher, Bear and Company Inner Traditions. They can go to bearandcompanybooks.com. They can go to Amazon. But whitespiritanimals.com is a lot of fun. I post things that people send me from around the world on white spirit animals, like the white moose and the white crocodiles and the white rabbits and all those sorts of things. And I also try to post other stories of interest that may be useful to the audience. So it's www.whitespiritanimals.com. And from that, it will connect you to 21stcenturyradio.com or ZoharaOnline.com.
Are you still doing your show on Sunday evenings?
Yes, Dr. Bob and I alternate hosting every week. We've done it over 30 plus years. And it's, as you know, it's a wonderful art, this art of communication, to share wisdom around the world.
Well, you say hello to Bob for both of us. And thank you so much for being with us this evening.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Exploring the bizarre. Your e-ticket ride into the world of the paranormal. Strap yourself in as we traverse the universe, exploring the unexplained. UFOs, ghosts, lost worlds, cryptozoology, as well as other dimensions. It's time to take back the night. Now, your electrifying hosts of Exploring the Bizarre, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
Is that you, John Lear? Is that you, John Lear?
I hear crickets.
You hear crickets? But he's in the middle of the desert. Are the crickets in the middle of the desert?
I think there could be crickets anywhere.
Well, yes. Actually, I remember one time we were having a UFO conference in Phoenix, Arizona. And Jenny Randles, a well-known British UFO author, had come over. We invited her over to speak to the conference, and she had a very unsettling experience. There was a cricket in her room. And she called the. I do believe, if I remember correctly, I don't want to embarrass her or anything like that, but I think she ended up sleeping by the pool.
Oh my God!
Which actually is not a bad experience if you're in Phoenix, Arizona, and the weather is not too stifling hot in the summer. Right now, I would go for a place by the pool myself, with or without the cricket.
Well, okay. So was she afraid of the cricket, or she just its constant chirping just kept her awake?
Well, I'm not sure, to be honest with you. Maybe it was bringing back some recollection of some giant insect on board of UFOs. I'm Jenny. If you're listening, I'm only having a good time on your behalf. But I do. It's funny how I remember the most ridiculous and sublime things over the years.
Oh, but those make the best stories, though.
Oh, they do indeed. Yeah, and I'm sitting here tonight. I'm just finishing up on this book on UFO hostility, and luckily that I do have a good memory for things like that, because I can remember. Hey, there's that particular case. I got to include it, and I know that I drive both Sean Castile, who does the proofing and the editing, and Bill Kern, who's working on the graphics on the book, absolutely crazy, because I'm never satisfied that I have everything in there.
Oh no! And as soon as the book goes to press, then there'll be like 20 more stories that'll pop up that you're like,
easy. I'm collecting enough material now for my second edition of the Synchronicities of Tim Beckley.
Oh,
I realized that there were a few that I neglected to put in there. Anyway, we were going to have John Lear on, and we hope still to have John Lear on, but he has not answered the Skype request that we sent him, and that's the way Skype works. You have to accept the person calling you, in this case, the radio station here, in order to get through. So it's you, me, and the universe tonight, it looks like, for the remainder of the show, but we could dance through almost any situation.
That's right. Do the hustle.
I didn't want to embarrass you while you were on the air with our last guest, but did you not have a monkey as a pet?
Oh, me? No.
Not me. But no, were you not a monkey grinder in one of your photos?
Oh, that's right. Yes,
See,
the evil monkey.
That's right. You are using the monkey as entertainment.
That's right.
Well,
right.
Listen, I'll tell you, monkeys can entertain themselves very easily with humans. I remember being in Costa Rica, and our guide for the afternoon was telling people, look at all the monkeys up in the tree, but be careful, because they will come down and try to snatch something that you own. And sure enough, one monkey came down from the tree, giggled a lot, grabbed the woman's purse, climbed back up the tree, and dumped the content, and started eating the lipstick.
Oh, God. Yeah,
so I think some animals think that we're very funny and use us for entertainment.
There you go.
Now, I'm not terribly satisfied with the concept that we shouldn't have zoos or even a circus. You take, for example, let's say a pack of huskies up in Alaska or something like that. Do not they see joyful when they're pulling a sled or racing? I mean, are they just supposed to sit around the fire all day and lick themselves, or what?
Well, I don't know. I think that's the difference, though, between, say, like domesticated animals and, wild animals. I mean, we domesticated animals. I mean, they've been bred, over the centuries to live with us and to be with us, to be companion animals. And you're right, though. I mean, dogs, the huskies, they would be unhappy if they didn't have a job to do. But that's a big difference, though, than putting them in a cage or even like a semi-natural habitat.
Yeah.
I mean, the huskies are doing something they love. They're with their owner whom they love, and they enjoy doing things like that. I mean, you've got, and Zahara was absolutely right, though, when you see a lot of these animals, they just are pacing back and forth, or like you said, the chimpanzees do just constantly throw themselves up against the glass enclosures. So
I often do that.
Well, I tell you, they're building how many, like 10 buildings around your apartments?
And they're all glass. Maybe I'll stand out in front and throw myself in front of one of the big windows on the ground floor or something like that.
Right.
And make funny faces and chew lipstick.
I wanted to talk about, though. I mean, the new book that we've got coming out. Hopefully, it'll be ready to go in a couple of weeks because I'm looking for.
Oh yeah. Well, we're technically done with it. Tonight we just put all the chapters in order, and there are like 27 or 30 chapters or something. We have a lot of contributors, people giving their thoughts and in opinion. And I found some cases that had not been published in many, many years. And most people, of the current UFO generation, I'm sure know nothing about these incidents at all. There was a fellow who lived down in Brazil, Dr. Olivia Fontes, right?
Yes.
And now he probably is best known for having interviewed and placed under hypnosis Antonio. Is it Antonio Boas?
Yeah, Villa-Boas,
right? The farmer who was abducted, I guess you could say, one night and had sex with a female alien, and that, of course, was
some kind of bean, humanoid.
Yeah. Almost feline, I think, was described. But that case was probably in its time what was considered very kind of scandalous. I mean, nothing like that had ever been heard before. Now we've even had people on our program here who claim that on a regular basis, instead of going to the local bar to hook up on Saturday night, they're having sex with reptilians.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the Villa-Boas case, I mean, no researcher here in the United States would touch that. They wouldn't, they wouldn't get it published. I think that, was it ASCAP? Was one of the first to actually mention, APRO. That's right. Yeah, that's right.
APRO, the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization.
Coral
and Jim Lorenzen out of Tucson. Mm-hmm. And in fact, we've had their librarian, Alan Benz, on before. And we've also talked about the really, really strange synchronicity where after the interview that I did with him, I drove down with my friend Charlotte to Sedona, and we were coming out of the little restaurant there, the Coffee Pot, after having brunch, and parked in the next slot over in the parking lot was an automobile with the license plate that said APRO on it. I asked Alan as a follow-up, I said, would there be anybody in the family, who wanted to keep the name of the organization going? Because they've been, defunct for 30 years or something like that. And he said, no, the children absolutely despise the fact that their parents had a UFO organization, and they would never have a vanity plate with APRO on it. But even if somebody did, how in the heck would it end up next to the automobile where we were parked? Nobody knew that we were going there. We didn't even know that we were going there.
Right.
Very strange. I mean, that's in the book on the Matrix control system of Philip K. Dick. But did I change this? What were you asking me? Oh,
well, no.
The hostility book. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's one of those subjects that I think that for a long time, researchers just they didn't, kind of like the possible sexual contacts. UFO hostility has been one that researchers have really been afraid to approach. Because back in the 50s, you had, like the Friendly Space Brothers who were here to, save our souls and everything like that. But then again,
we still like them. We like the Friendly Space Brothers, but we also have to acknowledge the fact that there are some entities, and I call them the ultra-terrestrials because we really can't prove that they're from space, that are not too friendly towards us. They chase our airplanes. They sometimes shoot them out of the sky. They leave. You wrote a chapter there on horrendous odors that have been known to poison people. There have been people like Cash Landrum who have had radioactive poisoning due to their close encounters. Anyway, there was this one researcher, Dr. Fontes from Brazil, and he had investigated quite a number of these cases where people had been horrendously burned. In fact, there's a chapter in the book about a UFO that came over a military fort in Brazil one night, I think about 2:00 in the morning, and shot out these balls of light and burnt real bad 2 or 3 of the soldiers who were on duty guarding the post. In fact, we went back and we found photographs and illustrations, photos of the those involved and photographs of the fort. When we put a book together, we do a heck of a lot of research, and it's not just people say, but you do a couple of books a month. But yes, but I have been collecting the material, and I know you have too, for over 50 years. So it's just a matter of do you remember where it is?
No, that's true.
and then getting your scanner to work.
Well, with me, when I research these stories, I just don't go and find one book and pull the story out verbatim. I have to go. And this is I spent years as a journalist. The whole key of doing this kind of work is verify. You can't trust just one source. And I've thrown out a lot of stories that sound really good, but then when you go and do the research, you find the exact same story in all the other sources, which led me to believe, and probably so, that there was probably one unverifiable source, and then everybody else just copied off of that. You get that. You get that in the more so in the age of the internet, very much
where
so.
it's. Where it's copy and paste, and people say, "Oh, you didn't give me credit." Well, you didn't write the story. It's in 7 other places. It's. But the name of the book, and it's not up on Amazon yet, but it will be in the next week or so. It is called UFO Hostilities and the Evil Alien Agenda: Lethal Encounters with Ultra-terrestrials exposed. Invasion, abduction, implants, vanish, death. What more can I say? Just remember UFO Hostilities in my name. That's all you have to do.
There you go. Right.
We'll have it. We'll have it as a special, reduced price up there on the Conspiracy Journal. But you know what I thought I would pull out of my hat tonight? People ask me, we talk about the ETH, the extraterrestrial hypothesis.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to be becoming more unpopular as the months roll by. The number of researchers who adhere to the theory that all UFOs or most UFOs are extraterrestrials seem to be shrinking, right? And their main supporters would be members of the disclosure crowd, who tend to accept almost any experience or any UFO story that's presented to them without any is the word vetting?
Yes. Yeah, without any vetting.
Okay. Yeah. But there's no vetting at all. But that's okay. I mean, everybody is entitled, certainly, to their opinion. And I'm sure we've had there have been cases, Tim, as you know, where people have been healed. I remember interviewing a police officer down in Texas who had been bitten by a poisonous snake, and he was on his way to the hospital to get an antidote, and he had his hand out the window, I guess, to get in some air. It must have been swelling by that time, and he had a UFO sighting and it shot down a beam onto his hand, and he didn't have to go to the hospital. The swelling went down. Something to that effect. I mean, I believe the guy's last name was Goody, Goody. So you could probably Google it to get the entire story. You know, that's back 50 years ago, and I don't remember the entire details, but I did write it up for Beyond magazine, which was a little imitation of Fate that was published for a few years before it on Long Island before it kind of folded.
Well, I remember, Tim. I remember that case because that very same beam also burnt like an impression almost in his chest, and there was pictures of that, and it disappeared.
I gotta go back and put it in the book.
Yeah, I'm not sure where. God, I haven't seen that picture in years. So, but it was like it was like a triangle or something kind of shape like that. But it would disappear, and then like every year it would pop up again.
Yeah. Well, we have a couple of photos in the book. In fact, there's a fellow who I'm trying to get on the show. There was an incident that took place. Help me on the year here. Maybe 1959. I don't want to swear to that.
Mm-hmm.
In Falcon Lake, Canada.
Oh no! Yeah.
Oh, okay. Stanislav or a Polish name, and he was a mechanic of some sort, and he would spend his spare time going out to the woods looking for crystals and for silver.
1967 is when that case took place.
1967. Okay, and while he was in a remote area, I think it was about 90 miles from the border separating Canada and the United States, and he had this experience where he saw two objects in the sky. One of them landed, and the other one, I don't know, either hovered up above or zoomed off, and a trap door or a port of some kind open, and he managed to illustrate these. I think he was sitting on a rock or something in the beginning, and he was quite an artist. In fact, the artwork is going to be in the book. But I guess as the time wore on, he got a little bit braver than perhaps he should have, and as he approached the craft, something shot out of it. Like a ball of a flamethrower or a ball of light or something, and hit him in the chest and knocked him out. And I guess I don't know whether he was rendered unconscious or not, but he managed to make it back to civilization and ended up in the hospital. And there's a famous photograph of him in the hospital bed where the shirt had been burnt off of him, and it almost looks like a checkerboard imprinted on his chest, where this object, like burned him pretty severely, and I think there was some hair singed and missing off of his hand, and it turns out his son, even though the witness in question, the experiencer, has since passed on, his son recently co-authored a book on the subject, and I thought it would be very nice to try to get him to come on the program. But there are quite a few cases like that. There's another case, what I call the Scoutmaster case, and that was in 1953. This Scoutmaster, his name was DeVergis, had wandered off into the woods. I guess he was with a troop of Boy Scouts or something like that. Had wandered off into the woods, saw this object, and again something zapped him, and left some burn marks, on his arm and his forehead. Burnt his cap.
Yeah,
that
that's
was
right.
the big thing. There was his cap was all singed and all. And at first, the authorities, the Air Force, came out there. I think it was Project Blue Book, or maybe it was even before Blue Book. It would have been Grudge, I guess. Came out there and they went to the area and they interviewed him extensively. And at first they said, there was no reason to suspect him of a hoax. But later on, when they couldn't come up with an explanation and the press started demanding an explanation, they said, he had made up the story. So something to that effect. The usual ball of wax there. So
that poor guy got a lot of grief from that incident.
Yeah, he did. Yes. Today they probably would fire him from the Scoutmaster as a Scoutmaster or something. I don't know whether they did in those days or not. But I found a report that was published in
Jim, before you get too involved here, we're just probably about 20 seconds away from our bottom of the hour break.
Burned by another UFO, I guess.
That's right. That's right.
This is always a bolt from out of the blue for sure.
All right. Well, we'll continue this conversation in just a few minutes on Exploring the Bizarre. So stay tuned for more UFO hostility.
Now back to Exploring the Bizarre with two of the most electrifying researchers in the paranormal, your hosts, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
Stuck in the saddle with you. I don't. Do you remember the words to that song, Tim? We can sing that together.
Yeah, I don't think it's stuck in the saddle with you. It's stuck in the middle with you, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, I don't know. We've been talking about the West, and of course, KCOR is in Las Vegas. So I don't know. It's not stuck in the saddle. Well, I always get. That's the one reason I could never be a singer. Not
You're
only that,
because back in the saddle again.
Back in the saddle with you. Well, I don't want to be back in the saddle with you anyway. I guess. I mean, that's, although I guess there's Pancho and the Cisco Kid, I guess they rode together. They've always been twosomes, right? In the old West.
I suppose if you want to look at it that way, yes.
Yeah. Butch Cassidy and the
Sundance Kid, the Lone Ranger in Tonto.
That's correct. Yeah, one wonders what all these. Never mind. Yeah. Hey, you know what? You know what I have here in front of me, in addition to my electric bill, is a list of UFO theories. Okay. And I was on a Paul Eno's show the other day, and we started discussing this, but I didn't get a chance. I think I covered 3 UFO theories, and that gives me about 17 more.
You mean besides the extraterrestrial hypothesis?
Oh, well, I threw that out right away. Okay. I mean, I gave that back to Stanton Friedman.
There you go.
To handle, and who has retired. I understand. I don't know what that means exactly, but everybody retires, but they don't. It's like Elton John. I've just added 7 more shows to my retirement tour.
There you go.
and and up the price another $35 or something like that. Yeah. It's the yellow brick road, all right. But he's a great entertainer. I don't mean to fault him. But anyway, there are so many other UFO theories. So I thought I would bounce a few of them in your direction, and you can bounce them back to me.
All right.
Okay. Well, let's start out. We'll give you a chance to besmirch the ETH.
Besmirch it?
Besmirch it, is that the word?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, I mean, okay, that one has been the favorite for years, and I mean, and you were talking about how it seems like more and more nowadays that it's kind of fallen out of favor. But I think though that it's still a favorite with people, maybe, the younger generations who are just now coming into the field, but anybody who has, like us, who has been researching and, investigating, talking to people, over the years, have come to realize that there is so much more to the phenomena than just simple nuts and bolts spaceships from other planets. And that's not to say that maybe some of these cases, aren't that. I mean, we live in a big universe, and I would be really disappointed if we were the only ones that, were alive here. But considering all of the especially high strangeness cases that you see with a lot of these UFO incidents, it just seems to me rather simplistic to say that all UFO sightings represent solid magnesium alloy or whatever you think they are, spaceships, faster than light spaceships from other planets. So and I've said this before. When I'm reading a book about UFO sightings, nothing irritates me more than when the author calls the UFO a spaceship rather than a UFO or whatever. There's the witness said that the spaceship flew overhead. Well, how do you know it was a spaceship? Did it have it printed on its side?
On the other hand, though, there are only so many words that you can use to describe something. So I find myself I want to put alien in quote marks.
Yeah.
Or spaceship. Maybe I sometimes use the word, I guess, mother craft or something, like that. I have to admit, I don't want to have to stop and explain in every paragraph. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I mean, either
when you write spaceship, though, I mean, that gives that visual image in the reader's mind of, a nuts and bolt craft coming from another planet, like our rocket ship, the space shuttle. Yeah.
Buck Rogers, yay for Buck Rogers and Captain Midnight and Riley Crab. No, Buster Crab.
Buster Crab. Right.
Yeah.
And
Riley Crab too.
There has been a number of encounters where, the creatures seen coming out of these ships and talking to people, they themselves say, oh yeah, we're from Alpha Centauri, we're the third, or, in the early days, they said they were from Venus or Mars or whatever. So, I mean, it's no wonder that, for, a couple of generations, that has been the favorite that's been the favorite child of the whole mystery.
Although I think once we realized that there could be no beings living on Mars or Venus, the contactees started saying that they were living inside the planet.
That's right. Well, I mean, and who's to say that these beings didn't actually tell the contactee? That's what I think it is. Who is it? I think it was John Keel who always said that when the UFO people come out and talk to you and tell you stuff, don't believe anything that they're saying because almost 100% of the time they're lying to you.
That is the truth. Anyway, I have a list here. UFOs that could doom life on Earth.
Yeah.
And they come from various locations. So I thought I would have you weigh in on some of these points of origin.
Okay.
Let us start out with the Goblin universe.
The Goblin universe. Okay, now when you say the Goblin universe, that makes me think of gosh, who was it?
Hopkinsville.
Okay. I see what you're talking about. Yeah.
The
Hopkinsville. The Kentucky
the Goblin
sightings.
universe. I believe that was a term that the doctor.
It was Jacques Vallée.
Holiday. F.W. Holiday. Yeah.
Right, yes, yeah.
The book he wrote. The U.S. edition is called The Hoblin Universe, but I think Professor Shellhorn might have changed the name from whatever it was originally. The Dragon and the Disc, which doesn't sound as exciting. But okay,
you're talking about the Hopkinsville, Kentucky sightings.
Yeah, but it could also be anything of an interdimensional nature. But we certainly have a weird group of, let me say again, spacemen, because I don't want to have to sit here and explain that. We've got the Michelin tire.
Right. Well, and that would seem to be a favorite in South America and in like France in like around 1952 when France had its big UFO occupant wave. But there've also been a number of sightings of spaceman. We'll put quotation marks around that. That seemed to look like the Michelin tire man. Wearing some kind of outfit, almost of inflatable rings or something like that.
Then you had the being down there in Pascagoula that kind of looked like a mummy.
Oh, the one that the ones that the fishermen.
Hickson and Parker. In fact, somewhere here in my one of my closets, I have a painting that was done by a hypnotist while one of the gentlemen was before him in a hypnotic trance. And
that was a very unique case, though, in terms of the way that the occupants looked. They're robotic. They had like almost like instead of ears and a mouth, they almost had like funnels or something. The pointed ends of funnels coming out of their heads. And they had rather than fingers, they had more almost like mittens or claws, almost is how they were described.
Yeah. Oh, and then we have our friend Johnny Sands, who saw the Aqua men.
Right. And I love that case because Johnny is just such a straightforward guy. It's one of these stories that's just like, he never benefited monetarily or anything. So, for all these people who are just like, these guys are just trying to make a buck with these UFO stories. It's like, if you're going to make a buck, you'll make more money working at McDonald's or Walmart than reporting a UFO story, expecting you to get money from
You've noticed that from your royalty checks, have you?
Yeah. That's right.
Now, one of my favorite cases, though, is I remember it was on the cover of Fate magazine, maybe 1954 or 55. This a woman who was she walking through the woods or something? She had flowers in her hand, and the aliens were trying to rip off her stockings.
Well, she had some potted plants, and she was carrying her laundry. She had taken her laundry down from the line. It had been outside drying, and she came across this craft that had landed. And this craft, she described it almost as like two ice cream cones that were placed, lip to lip together. So it had landed, and two creatures had come out of it, two beings, and they snatched the potted plants from her hand and then snatched her stockings too. I don't know. I thought maybe they thought that that was some kind of plant life that she had, but and then they hopped back onto the graft and it flew away.
That and you can't even say really that there were science. People say, the science fiction movies of the day. Decided what people were going images people were going to see as far as the aliens go. But I don't think any of those type of aliens were featured in a science fiction movie.
Oh, well, I mean, and this woman, I mean, it's not saying that maybe she never saw a movie before, but I mean, she was a peasant who lived in a rural area of France, and not really exposed too much to popular fiction or whatever. I mean, I can't remember what she said she thought it was, but she did make a mention, though, because you had talked about this about the Villalobos case, is that these creatures had almost a cat-like look to their faces.
Mm. Well, I whatever she saw, it certainly made a dynamite cover for a Fate magazine, and I believe it's on a Martian playing card. I can't remember the name of the series, but Fate magazine had their own card series, a trading card series, but there was another one with Martians on it, and I think that was in there somewhere. But there certainly has been a bevy of very weird looking ETs, even though, of course, some of them look mighty human in appearance. We have the Nordics, which we've written about in the Nazi time travel book, and a few other works that we've done on Nordic looking UFO beings.
Well, once again, though, we're back to this whole thing that if UFOs are spaceships from other planets, why do all these creatures look so much like us? Unless
speak for yourself. Speak for yourself.
Yeah,
speak
well,
for yourself.
I mean, practically all of these cases, we're dealing with things that have two arms, two legs, a head. Very, I mean, there may be superficial differences, height, skin color, big eyes or what have you. But practically every case that we have come across when we've, doing our work on this, the UFO occupants almost always have a humanoid shape. So, I mean, are we to conclude? And, I'm not a scientist, but, I know that, astrobiologists have said that life on other planets probably would not develop looking that similar to us. So unless there is some kind of universal constant where, like all life eventually develops looking like we do, or else we're talking about, I don't know, relatives. Maybe we're related somehow to these things, somewhere in the deep, dark past.
How about this theory? Topraz, which you have written about. Could we have created some of these beings ourselves with our powerful thoughts?
Well, are our thoughts that powerful? but yeah, I mean, I think that if these things represent some kind of life form that we don't understand, either energy-based or what have you, perhaps they are taking a form that our mind creates. I know that, again, John Keel has speculated, on this, that whatever the UFO phenomena is, that it's indigenous to Earth, and that it comes from almost like a realm of intelligence, and that we are able to interact with these things because we also exist in this realm of pure intelligence, and that with our unconscious thoughts, desires, belief systems, when we come into contact with these other forms of intelligence, we actually manipulate our reality to give them a shape, a form, something that we're familiar with. And of course, we're familiar with the humanoid shape, and then our minds then just kind of adds these little extras to make them look alien, so to speak, but still very humanoid. And a lot of these cases, like you're talking about the Nordics, so human looking that they could be sitting next to you at the craps table there in Las Vegas, placing bets, and you wouldn't really know the difference.
Well, you know how you would know the difference? They'd be winning.
Well, now where's the fun in that?
Yeah, exactly. But we do have some entities that are totally different life forms. You would never think of them in terms of humanoid one way or the other. And I'm speaking of space animals, living life forms in the atmosphere, and the rods.
Yeah. Well, like the critters, as has been speculated that, but I mean, we're talking about the UFOs themselves rather than their so-called pilots. And I mean, that has been a popular theory for a long time, that possibly our upper atmosphere, harbors life kind of like our oceans do. And that the upper atmosphere, has almost, maybe like a jellyfish type of creatures that occasionally will come down a little bit lower. Maybe they have like a bioluminescence to them, and that's how we're able to see them. And gosh, who is it? It's Trevor Constable.
Constable, yeah, Trevor.
Yeah. He actually went as far as to go out into the desert with cameras loaded with I think it was infrared and ultraviolet film, and managed to take pictures of what appeared to be like amoeba type of things flying around in the sky. So I mean, whether or not they're responsible for UFO sightings as we think about them, I do think that there's probably a basis in reality of some kind of unknown life forms living in our atmosphere.
What we have our friend Jose Amoeba. Little joke there, Jose, who we haven't heard from in a while, by the way. But he has, he has his discovery of the rods. I remember, I don't know, we're going back, 15, 17 years now. I was giving a conference in, I believe it could have been San Diego, or maybe I think it was Mesa. And he had gotten in touch with me just a couple of days before the event, and he says, I have these absolutely sensational, videos of these objects in the sky and blah, 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 and I want to make a presentation. And I think I probably bumped John Lear off the no, I'm kidding. but no, we gave him a spot, even if it was 2:00 in the morning, and he made this presentations. He had taken these videos. I guess he was living in Roswell.
Yes, he was.
At the time. I don't think he was living there. It had anything to do with UFOs. I forget the exact start of this, but just by happenstance, he was out with his video camera, and when he went to look at the video that he had produced that day, well, he's always been a filmmaker, right? He saw these weird things when he slowed down the image, like streaking in slow motion across the sky. And then there were certain locations, I guess, where he was able to photograph these things more or less on a regular basis. And then other people started to contact him who had taken a video video and still pictures of the rods. They look like what would you say? Giant scaly fish.
Somewhat like that. Yeah, I mean, just almost like caterpillars with wings flapping along their sides. You know, it's just
well, of course, some people say, oh, they're butterfly or they're birds, but you can tell. I mean, after a while, I mean, he's been doing this seriously for many years. He knows the difference between the flapping of an insect or a butterfly or a bird or something like that. No, I think it's an unknown. It's something that lives in our atmosphere. But we don't have long to live, Tim.
Nope, we're down to the last minute of our show here, Tim.
It happens every week. Not let us go over that extra hour.
Nope. Not unless we pay extra.
Well, there you go. It's not like getting on a bus. I mean, come on.
All right. Well, we have to say goodnight now, Tim. We have about 20 seconds left.
Okay. Don't forget our YouTube channel, Mr. UFO's Secret Files, and the show will be archived shortly on KCOR-FM. Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Tim. And good night.
Good night, all.
You've been listening to Exploring the Bizarre with hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz. They're taking back the night by jetting non-stop across the cosmos in search of the truly bizarre and totally unexplained, with you as their co-pilot. Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. For more information on Exploring the Bizarre and hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz, check out their KCOR Digital Radio Network page. Follow their YouTube channel at MRUFO 1100. Exploring the Bizarre.